All right, so we're diving into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And let me tell you, this book, it really gets you thinking differently about, well, money. And not
Mhm.
just like stock tips and stuff like that, but the deeper stuff, like how our minds actually work with money.
It's such a refreshing take on personal finance, isn't it?
Right.
It really gets at the heart of why we make the financial decisions we do, often without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's like he's pulling back the curtain on all these hidden forces that shape our relationship with money. And he kicks things off with this great anecdote about a tech millionaire who, despite his insane success, had some pretty interesting spending habits, to say the
Oh,
least.
you mean the one who'd walk around with wads of cash handing out thousands to people to gamble with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who does that? It really throws you for a loop because you'd think someone that successful would have it all figured out, right?
Right. But it just goes to show that financial success and financial wisdom don't always go hand in hand. Everyone's relationship with money is shaped by their own unique experiences, and sometimes those experiences lead to, shall we say, unconventional money habits.
And that's where things get really interesting. Hell still talks about how these experiences, especially the ones we have early on in life, become almost like subconscious beliefs about money.
It's like we develop these internal scripts, these ingrained narratives about what money means, how it works, and how we should interact with it.
And those scripts, they can be incredibly powerful. They influence everything from how much we're willing to risk to how we feel about saving or spending.
Absolutely. For example, someone who grew up during a recession might be super cautious with money, always focused on saving for a rainy day, while someone who came of age during a booming economy might be more inclined to invest aggressively or take financial risks.
It's like their past is literally shaping their financial present. And often they don't even realize it's happening. It made me think about, like, what were the money conversations like in my family growing up? What did I pick up on, even subconsciously, about how to handle money or maybe how not to handle it?
It's like we try to make sense of money, create these rules in our heads, but then Housel throws this concept of tails at us. Throws everything for a loop, really.
Right. It's like, whoa, hold on. I thought it was all about picking the right investments, making smart choices. But he's saying sometimes it's more about what you don't do.
Exactly. It's about avoiding those big, often unexpected events, good or bad. Mind you, that can really throw a wrench in your financial plans. He calls them tails, right? Those outliers that can make or break you.
And he uses tales, these events, almost to challenge this idea, this illusion a lot of us have that we can control everything when it comes to money, right? Like we're diligently saving, investing, doing all the right things, and then bam, life throws a curveball.
Like a market crash, right? Or some unexpected medical bill, something completely out of left field.
And suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I thought I had this all figured out.
It's humbling, for sure. It reminds us that while we can control our choices, we can't control every outcome.
Which kind of terrifying, but also in a way freeing, right?
Definitely. It takes the pressure off needing to be right all the time to predict the unpredictable.
And he illustrates this whole tails idea so well with the story of Warren Buffett. Here's this legendary investor, the Oracle of Omaha, right? But get this. He made the vast majority of his wealth, like an insane amount of it, after turning 50.
Talk about playing the long game, right?
Yeah.
It really highlights that time and consistency, maybe a little sprinkle of luck, can be way more important than trying to time the market perfectly.
Which, let's be honest, most of us are terrible at anyway, right?
Exactly. But then, just when you're feeling all warm and fuzzy about the power of patience, Housel throws in the cautionary tale of Jesse Livermore. Remember him, Wall Street legend, made and lost fortunes multiple times over, and ultimately couldn't escape the power of those tales.
Yeah, a stark reminder that even the most brilliant investors can get caught off guard, right? So if we can't predict these tales, how do we make smart decisions? Like, how do we even begin to navigate this uncertainty?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, Housel suggests two key strategies: diversification and, you guessed it, a long-term perspective.
Okay, let's break this down. Diversification, I feel like we hear that word a lot, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Essentially, it's about not putting all your eggs in one basket. So instead of investing solely in, say, tech stocks, you spread your bets, your investments, across different asset classes. Real estate, bonds, maybe even things like art or collectibles, if that's your thing. It all depends on your own risk tolerance, of course. But the main idea is to create a safety net so that if one area of your portfolio takes a hit, the others can help cushion the blow.
So even having multiple income streams, like a side hustle or maybe renting out a property, could be considered a form of diversification.
Absolutely. The more you diversify, the less reliant you are on any single investment or income stream, which could be incredibly empowering, especially during times of, well, let's just say economic uncertainty.
For sure. And I'm guessing the long-term perspective part ties into this.
It definitely does. It's about riding out those inevitable market ups and downs instead of, panicking and selling everything when things get bumpy.
Easier said than done, though, right? Especially when you see your portfolio tanking and everyone's freaking out.
Absolutely. But that's where understanding the psychology of investing comes into play. Because, let's face it, we're emotional beings. And those emotions can lead us to make some pretty irrational decisions when it comes to money.
Oh, 100%. And this is where I think Housel's book really shines. It's not just about numbers and spreadsheets. It's about understanding the human element, the emotions that drive our financial choices.
Right. And one of the most powerful concepts he introduces is this idea of enough.
Instead of always chasing after more money, more stuff, more status, he argues that true financial contentment comes from defining what enough looks like for you.
And he emphasizes that this enough isn't just about amassing a certain net worth or having a specific number in your bank account. It's more about, well, freedom, really.
Freedom to do what?
Freedom to make choices that align with your values, to spend your time doing things you find meaningful without constantly worrying about money.
Freedom, huh? I like the sound of that. But it's easier said than done, right? Like, how do we actually get to that place of enough, especially in a world that's constantly telling us we need more, more, more?
It's definitely a process, and it starts with shifting our mindset, right? Housel argues that money, in itself, isn't the end goal. It's a tool to buy back something far more valuable, your time and your freedom, to make choices that align with what you find meaningful.
He tells that story, right, about almost taking a high-paying investment banking job, but then realizing it would have been sacrificing like all his free time, his flexibility, just to make a ton of money he probably wouldn't have even had time to enjoy.
Exactly. And that really resonated with him because he realized that for him, having control over his time was more valuable than having a huge paycheck. And that's a really important point, because it's different for everyone.
Totally. Like, what makes me feel financially secure and content might be totally different from what works for you, right? And it might even change over time.
Absolutely. In fact, Howdalda talks about this thing called the end of history illusion. It's this idea that we tend to assume our future selves will have the same values, goals, and, risk tolerance as our present selves, which is often not the case at all.
Oh, tell me about it. The things I stressed about in my 20s, the things I thought were so important, seem almost laughable now.
Right. And this illusion, this end of history thing, can lead to financial decisions we later regret. Like, imagine locking yourself into this super aggressive savings plan in your 20s because fire financial independence, retire early is all the rage. But then you hit your 30s and realize you actually want to start a family or travel the world, and that requires a different kind of financial plan, right?
Totally. Or maybe your dream job at 25 no longer holds the same appeal when you're, say, 40 and have different priorities.
It's about building in flexibility, being open to course correcting as our lives evolve, And that's really key because it's not about predicting the future perfectly. It's about making choices that allow us to adapt and thrive, whatever life throws our way.
Makes sense. But okay, let's be real. We're not always the most rational creatures, are we? Especially when it comes to money. It's like our emotions can sometimes lead us to make decisions that seem, well, kind of crazy in hindsight.
Absolutely. And Housel dives into this, the psychology behind it all, with that great story about Julius Wagner-Jauregg, the doctor who cured syphilis by intentionally giving his patients malaria.
Wait, what? That sounds a little counterintuitive.
It seemed crazy at the time, right? Like, why would you ever intentionally give someone a dangerous disease?
Yeah.
But it worked. And it just goes to show that sometimes the most effective solutions aren't always the most obvious or, the most rational seeming at first glance.
Interesting. So how does that apply to our finances, would you say?
Well, it reminds us that sometimes the best financial plan isn't necessarily the one that's perfectly optimized on a spreadsheet, but the one that you can actually stick with, even when your emotions are going haywire.
Because, let's be honest, when the markets tank or we get hit with an unexpected expense, it's easy to let fear and panic take over, right?
Exactly. And that's when we're most likely to make impulsive decisions that we later regret. That's why Housel emphasizes the importance of building in a margin of safety, a financial cushion, if you will, to absorb those inevitable mistakes and unexpected events.
He has that great quote in the book, "The purpose of the margin of safety is to render the forecast unnecessary."
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that we can't predict the future with 100% certainty, so we need to build in safeguards to protect ourselves from the unknown.
So instead of trying to time the market perfectly, which is pretty much impossible anyway, we should focus on, say, having an emergency fund, diversifying our investments, and not taking on more debt than we can comfortably handle. Practical things that give us peace of mind.
Precisely. It's about making choices that allow us to sleep soundly at night, knowing we've taken steps to mitigate potential risks and weather those inevitable financial storms.
This deep dive has really given us a lot to think about, don't you think? It's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding our own psychology, our own money story, and making choices that align with our values and our vision for the future.
Absolutely. And I think the most important takeaway is that financial literacy isn't just about understanding interest rates and investment strategies. It's about understanding yourself. It's about recognizing how your own unique experiences and beliefs about money might be influencing your decisions, and then using that self-awareness to make choices that lead to greater financial well-being and ultimately a richer, more fulfilling life.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the psychology of money, we encourage you to reflect on these ideas and ask yourself, what's one small step you can take today to align your financial decisions with your values and long-term goals? Maybe it's having an honest conversation with your partner about money, or maybe it's finally defining what enough means to you. Whatever it is, remember that mastering your money mindset is an ongoing journey, and every step you take toward greater self-awareness brings you closer to creating a life of true abundance and fulfillment.